Hi, and welcome to Soul and Science, a podcast on uniting Western psychology with Eastern wisdom. My name is Nyana, and I'm a psychotherapist residing in India and in conversation with Ardaas ji, who is an international trainer in yogic wisdom, and he is from Portugal. We invite you to embark on a profound exploration of the human journey with us. We integrate scientific insights into the mind with Eastern wisdom on life's polarities, paradoxes, and boundless nature to uncover a deeper understanding of our existence. Season 1, we begin with the exploration of relationships and the part that leads back to the self. Why relationships? We are constantly engaging in relationships with everything around us, from people to our environment. While we usually focus on relationships between two people, the most profound relationship we have is with ourselves. How many of us are truly aware of this relationship we have? Do we nurture it, trust, love, and respect it? Or are we living in fear and rejection of self, waiting to be validated externally? So join us as we go deep dive into the relationship with our mind, our body, and our spirit. With that, I will ask Ardaas ji to introduce himself and tell us a little about himself and maybe begin a little bit about helping us understand where do we come from.
So, I'm not going to introduce myself much. I think if somebody is following this podcast, then they will find out who we are. I think it's good enough that we can just start with a conversation. But yes, I am Ardaas Singh. I am living in Portugal, and yes, today is about the essence. We were discussing what topic should we choose for today, and first the idea would be the soul. But of course, the soul is not a topic that you mentioned from a psychological perspective, except we can talk about whether somebody believes in the soul or not. That could be a psychological concept, but there's no real psychological, let's say, laboratory experiments that we can do to figure out where the soul is and how is our relationship to it. So we figured out that it would be best to talk about it as the essence. So, Nyana, what is the perspective of psychology on the essence?
I took so much time to really think about this. And um, it's so interesting that when I was looking back at psychology, it took me back to the origins of the word psychology, and that its Greek um, beginnings actually means psyche, really means the soul, the spirit, breath, and all of those aspects. And it is basic the study of that. That was originally what the intention of psychology was. And I see you
Incredible, huh?
smiling.
Amazing.
And when we look at putting that together, we're looking at basically the study of life and breath, which was psychology. And then somehow along the way, because things that need to be studied, need to be measured, and need to have all of that, it became more pathology oriented somewhere around the 1800s. And then fast forwarding later on, there were people like Carl Jung and Roberto Asagoli, and who brought back the conversation of the essence and the soul. And today, modern psychology that talks about the world of trauma, for specifically like Dr. Gabor Mate, or internal family systems, or even something as uh, you know, behavioral, as dialectical behavior therapy talks about the soul, the essence, and something called wise mind, which is very similar to buddhi mind, which you might want to explain a little bit more about, and talks about this area of contemplation and the role of awareness, consciousness, soul, and essence in our ability to heal, and that the disconnection from that is where the pain and the discomfort and the dis-ease is coming from. And so there's almost been this trajectory that we began with the original intent, which somehow got lost again around the way, and we're kind of finding our way back to really understanding what's going on within the human being, and why is there actually even an increase that we're seeing in this disconnection, or more people in suffering and pain and illnesses than we've ever seen before. For example, depression or anxiety, and that there is a conversation in the world of transpersonal psychology, contemplative psychology. It's really talking about this whole disconnection from the soul that's leading to and a disconnection from our essence and the expression of who we truly are, or what we call the true self in psychology, that's leading to the disruption or the dis-ease. So that's really where I think psychology is staying in it from its original experience of wanting to study the soul and life and the mind and breath and things like that.
Let's take this last point that you mentioned. Because if it's about the disconnection from the soul, that has been always been the case. It's always been the case that we have always been disconnected from the soul in general, from, 300 years ago, 400 years ago, 500 years, any age of the planet, we've always been, as the moment that we are born in the planet, we feel disconnected from the soul. And then some people will choose a path that is spiritual in a quest to reconnect to something higher or something more deeper inner. Let's say we can call it both directions. So if that was the case, if we've always been disconnected from the soul, the fact that now there's more mental illnesses, I don't think is connected to that. It's got to be something else.
There's a lot of factors that changed along the way. So before, they used to call it neurosis, and then they changed that whole experience and that conversation around that, right? Um, and how they actually viewed it. And today there are a lot more of those variations of that. But also it came, my senses, and I'm not saying that there is an answer to it yet. Do we have the answer to it? No, we don't. Um, as to why we're seeing more of it now than we have before. But my sense is, and I think Gabor talks about how we lived in tribes earlier, and the increased sense of isolation and away from that way of living with ancestral knowledge, the knowledge of the soul. If we look at, I was reading this quote by a shaman that when somebody came with an illness to a shaman, they said, when did you stop? When did you stop dancing? Or when did you stop laughing? Or when did you stop singing? When did you really stop expressing your soul?
Very nice, very interesting.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And I feel that with the coming of the Industrial Revolution and all of those things, I think maybe humanity has moved further away from its essence and its understanding of essence, um, and wisdom than we've ever seen possibly before. And that's just some of the things that I think I've heard Gabor Mate and other people talk about, that says that, okay, there is a call to come back home towards that knowledge, towards that wisdom that is so inherently in our roots, and in our wisdom inherently within us. But so much of the world has become outward versus inward, and that could be a big reason why we're seeing some of this shifts. Of course, looking at some of wars and migration and immigration, and how further away we are from you know um, family, tribes, living together, understanding and carrying on that wisdom. Not to mention that with wars and all these things came a lot of trauma, and
Yes.
therefore disconnection of a different kind. um, and it became about survival more than, and when you're surviving, are you truly in a space to connect in that way? And that, I think, is what I would say I have understood, but may not be the answer really. And
Mm. Certainly, if you are in survival mode, you cannot stop to ponder these questions. Where is my soul or my essence, or who am I, or these things? That's for certain. So the more critical becomes people's lives, like, right now after COVID, there is a huge struggle economically. I see it all around. We were just talking this morning with somebody as well, that we see, like for example, the yoga trainings are being canceled. Now, why is that? A lot of them all over the world. Why is that? Because I think partly people have to concern themselves with basic survival. If you don't have enough money to sustain your family, you cannot think about, enrolling for a training that's going to take a year. Is going to be a financial burden on the family. So the moment that people are struggling with survival, you don't have space and time for questioning yourself and reflecting upon these ideas, like my soul, for example. Um, I think the struggling has always been there. There's always been some struggling, but I like this idea of how we are going away from the tribal living. And the more we are interconnected, the more um, we have our lives online, and we are exposed to people who are not from our tribe, people who are anonymous, giving us feedback on ourselves that we don't know about. So that happens. I don't know this person, and they're giving me a feedback on myself. If it's somebody from my tribe, I'm going to trust it because they are close by. But if they are from far away, what am I going to do with that? And if I take it very strongly, whatever feedback I'm getting, and especially criticism, then I am going to be very sensitive, because there's always going to be somebody who's going to criticize us, and there's always going to come, from if you're exposed in a place where people who don't have any kind of responsibility, like you are visible online, and they are not visible, so they are anonymous. They can say something to you and they have no responsibility back. So they can be saying things about you, and then you are like, oh my god, that's how people see me. And then you start questioning yourself. But this is the concept. Yeah, yourself, this self, who is that? No, who is that self that we are talking about? That goes back to the essence. What is my essence? And how much of what they are saying, independently of whether it's true or not, it's about my essence, or how much is it about the other things that are not my essence? So on one side, yes, this interconnection and this global online living is pulling us away from this the security that we may find in a tribe, and we may feel more insecure, and that could make us question our own essence as well. At the same time as well, this capacity to connect online to many cultures has other benefits. No, there's always both sides of the coin. There's also on one side, we have access to some teachings which are very ancient, and they used to be secret, no, because they were sacred, so they were kept secret. And now they are open, and you can just Google it, and you can find all the information. Something that somebody would have to go to a monastery and be in the door of the monastery and brushing the doorsteps for maybe 10 years for the main monk to let you in, because they notice that you are disciplined and you have commitment and the resilience and humble, and they say, okay, you are welcome, now you can go in. And 10 years to go in, and then they give you a little bit of teachings, right? Nowadays you can just click and then you have access to these teachings. So that's great. And another thing is that by being exposed to people different from you, then you can have a different perspective on how do you see yourself. And if you want to explore who are you, what is my essence, we're going to have to explore these different aspects of myself, of how am I seeing in the world. So that also brings some positive aspects. But what I feel is that there's both sides of the coin, but at the same time, it's become much more extreme. Like not living in a tribe, everything is much more extreme. So the both sides of the coin, become also more extreme. And that's why you will find a great spiritual movement, a lot of people practicing yoga, meditation, all these things that were before secret and only a few could do. Now many, many more people can do it. Rare is the person who doesn't know what yoga is nowadays. But at the same time, there is a lot of depression, there is a lot of despair, there is a lot of people in the darkness and who feel they cannot cope with this incredible exposure to to the wide world as well, no, through this social media, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's such a great segue because I keep thinking about this essence, right? And what is it? Who am I in relationship to this experience that is around me, that is allowing me to connect? And what does that mean about my essence and myself? And who am I even more as a question? Because before the tribe was, I'm Indian and this is what my experience was. Whereas now I am speaking example to you from Portugal about these conversations with people from across the world, possibly viewing it. And what does that mean about my essence in this conversation? And who am I in this conversation? Right? And that there is a difference between what I do, which is I'm a trauma therapist, to who am I, which is the essence and the soul. And to separate the two, which in many cases has become one. So when you are asking somebody, who are you? They're like, I am doing this job, but doing is very different from who you are.
Right.
Right. And
Doing
that
or
is,
being. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
that is the essence of this conversation today. And I was just wondering from the ancient wisdom, what do we see as essence and soul? And because I think while psychology is still trying to integrate some of that into, and its understanding is this self or this awareness or this consciousness that rests within us, that has this ability to observe and be a witness to all that is, and has the ability to separate from the doing behaviors, and that essence is essentially neutral. It's neither got a positive or a negative charge to it. And from that space, we can remain objective and live by um, the full understanding experience of human life. And so there's a doer, which is within me, and then there is also an observer, and then, there is an interaction between the soul and then, or if you want to call that the ego, then the ego. And the soul has the essence of compassion, clarity, consciousness, courage, presence, playfulness. It has these qualities that allow it to be um, an observer from a sense that is not got any judgment attached to it, and that it's
Um,
possible to live from that space. Now that's what I'm just putting it in a quick
right.
nutshell to what psychology is calling the true self, and some people are calling it soul psychology, and they're different terminology to call the same thing, and then there are different aspects. So what do we see as the soul and the essence that we aren't fully connected to today in this day and age? And how do we kind of also possibly live more from that? And what are the benefits of that?
Mm. Well, you mentioned a lot of qualities attributed to the soul, from compassion and patience and playfulness. I don't know which others you said, and I'm not sure that's qualities from the soul. I'm not entirely sure about that, because the soul is something. I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying I'm not sure. Okay, the soul is something that is much more essential,
Mm,
and it's something that we are not connected to.
mm,
And whenever we talk about these qualities, they are generally qualities that we express in the world, but the soul doesn't need to express itself in the world. The soul is just an essence of being, like you're saying, is not doing, is the being, right? Now, when we are playful in the world, or when we are, behaving in a particular way, that expression, is that an expression of the soul? I don't know. I think there is a lot of layers here. The idea of the onion is always useful. There is a core and there is a number of layers on top of that. And on the essence, the inner essence, the most deepest core of ourselves. That is the self or the Atman or the soul, if you wish to call it. And they are kind of synonymous words. I'm not sure they are all the same. There might be slight differences between them, but there is these different um, terms. No, so the core, that's the core, the self. Okay.
And sorry,
Then,
all have the
say,
same core,
sorry.
irrespective. I said, do all human beings have the same core, irrespective
Correct.
of
Correct. And
anything they have done, not done, karmic, this, that? We all,
correct.
yes?
We all have a soul, and just, right now I'm talking to you like you were putting me as an example, and you are from a very different culture than mine, and there is a lot of layers that have been added onto you. This is like the whole discussion of nature versus nurture. I think it comes here as well. No, a lot of the nurture is going to be very different for you and for me. And then the nature, there's going to be something that is different from you and from me, and there is another thing which is similar between you and me. So I think there is some essence that is the same in common in both of us. Let's put ourselves as an example, and anybody can do it with anybody else, right? We both have the same essential qualities that we can say we are human beings, both of us. So that's something essential that we have in common. All right. Uh, and yet, there is uh, also some essential nature qualities that are different between you and me. And then there is the nurture, is the component that we learn. So that's, of course, going to be very different between you and me. Now, if I'm exposed to somebody like you, who we have a different culture, and I notice how different you are from me, when I compare myself, interesting, the word compare, we use it to figure out how we are different from somebody else. But the word compare comes from common. And you
Mm.
could say even a common pair, like a common two things. What do they share in common? So we could compare each other to find what we have in common rather than to see how different we are. And we would find that there is an essence that is in common between the two of us. And now that for that, we require peeling off the layers of this onion. And some of these layers are just going to be culture based, learn from the culture, learn from our parents, learn from our school teachers, and things. Media, it plays an important role, especially in later ages. Okay, so all that is like an outer layer. And then there is personality. And I guess here you are going to be the expert and you're going to tell me more about this, right? But I can imagine that there is, even within personality, there is some outer layers of personality and there's some inner layers of personality, and I may change some of my behavior in the world through life, and I'm learning things, but then there is some essential personality traits that are deeper and they are stable and uniform. Please, this is more like my question to you, yeah? But from the yogic perspective, even if you go to the deepest layer of personality traits that are most essential to you, the ones that are going to be uniform throughout the life, you can go even deeper than that, and there's the self.
Mm.
And that's not a way of expressing yourself into the world. So I wouldn't say that the soul is, let's say, playful. Yeah, we can have an essential playful nature in our characteristics of the personality traits, but or not essential, but more like a superficial one. But the soul by itself, it doesn't need to do anything. It's just there. It's just shining. It's light. It's consciousness. It's bright. It's just we are, the moment that we are stopping and paying attention, that's a moment when we can connect to this consciousness. And the essence of the self, the essence of Atman or the soul, is consciousness.
Mm.
So it is like the stuff that is made of. So if I look at this is made of plastic. Yeah. If
Mm.
I look at the essence of the soul, is consciousness.
Mm.
So when the moment that we become aware, the moment that we pay attention to something, or when we are practicing becoming conscious, like in meditation, it's in a way we are tuning into the soul aspect of us. Yeah.
Mm.
Does that make sense? And what's the perspective from the psychology on the different levels of personality?
So I think a lot has shifted, Ardaas ji, I think, I'm speaking from a trauma perspective specifically, that we are born with this essence, and here in psychology we're talking about it with characteristics of the true self. Soul, true self, consciousness is kind of this observer, right, which is sort of neutral. And then there are these aspects of us, right, or a temperament that we're born with, right. And then along the way in life, if things happen, right, growing up, you may have losses, there might be abuse, there might be all of these events in one's life. And today we're beginning to see this personality as also a series of maybe coping strategies that would become a part of that existence of that individual, that is responding to the events and to these belief systems that we create based on these events. So, for example, the soul is neutral. It has no beliefs, it has no needs. It just is, right? It's conscious.
Correct.
Then there is this identity that is created, that is Nyana. And Nyana has all these life events that she had growing up, and she made it mean something about her. Example, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, school was hard. Examples, right? And then in order to cope with that, with those beliefs that were made during childhood, we develop coping strategies that become inadvertently, unknowingly, unconsciously a part of our personality in the way we perceive life and the way we respond to life.
Correct. And those are the habits that can be, let's say, soul promoting or soul demoting.
Exactly. And most of us are unconscious, and we take this personality to be who we are, which we can now are beginning to see is that really me?
Right.
Right. And then in therapy, we're able to, through grounding and other forms of mindfulness that we bring into the experience, to get a sense of, okay, let's bring our awareness back into the room. And if you were to able to witness what happened, would you still see it in that way? Right? Something that happened in childhood, did it really mean that you are not good enough?
Right.
That if that were not your belief, what would be who would you show up as in this world today? And that might be radically different. And
Right.
the ability to allow that witness to hold space for you to say, okay, maybe that is not the truth. And I know we'll come back to truth, and we can't have these
Yes.
conversations without talking about
Yes.
the truth. But that is what I took on as a perception and a belief, because nothing else made sense to the ego developing mind at that point in time, and the developing personality of a child during that time, that took it on to make sense. And now when I look back through the lens of the observer who's neutral, there are so many other possibilities that show up suddenly.
Right. And the very fact that you can reprogram that, or that you can rewrite the way you understand your history or the narration that you were talking about, the narrative that we have, that's already proof that that's not the essence of yourself. Because
Yeah.
we may take it as my essence. That's who I am worthless, or I am, yeah, we say it like that. I am X, no, something
Yeah.
there. And the fact that we can change that narrative and we can change that story, or at least the way we understand it, that's proof that that's not our essence.
Absolutely. And that gives the person the empowerment, for me particularly as well, to even know that there was somebody other than these beliefs that I had accumulated over time.
Right.
uh, was liberating in a sense that, oh, then I have the opportunity to get to know who I am,
Right. Right.
right? From a different lens, and also that these narratives no longer serve. And if I'm going to continue to live from those narratives, it's going to continue to generate more suffering, right? Because those narratives were the narratives of a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, but they aren't true for a 43-year-old.
Right. Okay. Excellent. Let's go there, since you are specialized on trauma therapy.
Yeah.
So the idea from yoga is that the soul comes into this body, and as it comes, there is no mind, there is no ego yet.
Mhm.
And then as we are progressing through the first 3.5 years, and then 7 years, first the ego is forming and then is reaffirming itself. This is like a yogic psychology, we could call it, yeah, perspective of
So tell us.
yeah. Huh?
So the soul enters, and then there is the understanding that there is ego development happening.
Correct.
Okay. Yes.
Correct. And if we look at the eyes of a baby, sometimes you can see infinity in there, because there's not yet an angle on how to see the world. There's not an opinion, there's not a perspective. All these things that are layers from the ego that have to be formed, they are not there yet, and therefore you can see the essence much more clearly. And that essence is connected to the universal essence, because we are always connected, but we also feel disconnected, right? Because there is a double disconnection. Maybe we should also point this out. There is a feeling of disconnection from our soul, and there is a feeling of our disconnection to the universe and everybody around and God. Yes, so there is a double feeling of disconnection, let's say, which is a false feeling, but we feel it's very true. So okay, so the baby is born and the essence is coming in, but the soul of the baby does not come just clean and pure and perfect and shining and wonderful, and that's it. And then everything that goes on top, all these layers, are just the product of the environment, and it's, let's say, it's their fault. This is not what we say. The soul comes accompanied by a set of latent impressions from past lives. So whatever we have been living in different lives, it has accumulated a number of impressions on the deepest layers of the psyche, maybe. And somehow when we die, this is the understanding from yoga. You were just in a workshop on death, I know, last week. So you probably explore this concept. But in yoga, we say, well, the moment that you die, you drop the body, you drop the emotions. You know what? You drop the chakras as well. Chakras don't go with you where you die. So you can spend your whole life meditating and doing yoga to open your chakras. You know what? When you die, you don't take the chakras with you. So why are you meditating on the chakras, right? That's a yogic perspective of non-attachment even to the practices of yoga. But even if the mind dies, the mind also dies. The impressions that were left on this deepest layer of the psyche or the unconscious or whatever, these impressions, they continue with you. And when you are born in the new life, when you come back as a soul into the new life, like my soul chooses this family, and then, which is also an interesting thing to mention, no? In yoga, we say that we choose our family. We choose where to be born, because that's the family where we can be exposed to the kind of lessons we need to learn. So the baby is born, the soul is infused into the baby, and with the soul come those impressions and latent karmas. We call it samskaras, latent karmas. So what happens is, if you have two twins and they are going through this very, very similar experience with the same parents, the same environment, and the same kind of nutrition and the same kind of um, um, stimulus around, and everything is almost the same for the two twins, and yet they are going to live it very differently. I mean, in many ways they're going to be similar, but in other ways they're going to be quite different. So they can experience the same situation with I don't know, something happens, some circumstance happens, and one may experience it in a traumatic way and the other one not necessarily. So here comes the trauma. Yeah, I'm trying to connect. I'm getting a path to there. So what makes it so that the one of them chooses it to understanding in a way that is traumatic? And I say the word chooses, I mean, in a very unconscious or subconscious way. They are not choosing it consciously, but on a subconscious level, they choose to experience that in a way that can be traumatic, because that resonates with the kind of impression that they have within, that they have to learn something. So that experience happens. It had to happen for a reason. They had to learn something out of that. And they choose to interpret it in a way that could become traumatic and later go through the process of healing that in life. And we all have a number of important lessons that we need to learn, and we go through life learning these lessons and hopefully releasing some of those impressions, so that when we go away from this life, we have less impressions than before. And if you um, are graced and are able to remove all the impressions from this attached to your soul, let's say, that's when we call a person gets liberated. That's when a human being has reached that stage. He or she is liberated from these latent karmas, and they don't have to come back as a reborn. They don't have to be reborn. They can just um, stay in the other place. We're not talking about that now, but let's say they can just go into the other realms. And then so our duty as we are coming through life and as we go through life, and maybe not duty is the word, but what we are doing is just learning from these experiences. Now, okay, some of the experiences are going to be traumatic, and some of them are going to be just an experience of pain or even suffering. And this comes where this is something very important as well, because pain and suffering is different, and we can go through pain and not suffer, and something that is not necessarily painful can cause us suffering. So pain is not a sign that there is something wrong with it. Initially it is, because we are designed as animals to react to pain. I don't know if we talked about this in the podcast. No, have we talked about? No. Okay, because sometimes I confuse with other videos that I do. So okay, so as biological creatures, we have an incredibly intelligent system that has programmed us over hundreds of thousands of years as animals becoming humans. Uh, that if there is something that could endanger you, now we come to the survival aspect, then it's going to produce pain. So be careful, right? So if I strike myself against a wall and then there is blood, I'm going to feel pain. For me to know that that's be careful, because you could get an infection and you could die. So it's there to protect us. And the thing is, we on a biological level, we are programmed to avoid pain and seek pleasure. For example, finding natural sugars in nature is not so easy. If you think about in the wild, going and finding some wild berry, that would be great. So the wild berry is sweet and is wonderful for the system, and you want more because you need that to survive. Now, in the society that we live now, you can just open the drawer, go to the supermarket, and find lots of chocolates and sweets. So that's not natural. And so the same mechanism that made us survive over so many hundreds of thousands or millions of years, now it goes against us, because that pleasure-seeking behavior, no, let's go for that sugary thing, is actually not natural to find so many sweets, and therefore is gonna put us into trouble and then cause all sorts of problems later on. So pleasure is not an indication of something that is good for us, and pain is not an indication of something that is bad for us. So you were talking about disease, and disease, the word is like unease, something that is not easy, and yet we have to figure out, be careful, because as long as your survival is covered, as long as your life is covered and you are safe, which is, for most people, we are safe. We don't have lions attacking us at night, so we are quite safe. Then the quest would be for thriving. Yeah, not survival, but survive or thrive. This is the thing. So if I want to be in a quest for thriving, I have to, in a way, get out of my comfort zone, because where I am right now, this is not. I haven't found the my true essence. We were talking about the true essence, no? So if I want to explore what is that true essence, I have to find new ways to find myself, in a way, find new ways to the world is a reflection to ourselves. So exploring different parts of the world will give me a reflection towards parts of myself that I don't yet know, to see if I can get into contact with that essence of me that I don't yet know, because I feel disconnected from that. But to do that, I have to go and meet unfamiliar people, and I have to meet people from other cultures, and I have to be exposed to situations which are not comfortable, because we would be very comfortable in the tribe and we can survive in the tribe. But I think it's a blessing that we are getting out of the tribe culture and we are now exposed to the worldwide world, and we are open and connected to so many different people, because we can be very lazy when we are in our little group of friends. and
Mm.
we can not challenge each other, because if I challenge you, you're going to challenge me. So I'm not going to challenge you. And, maybe you smoke some cigarettes. I'm going to let you smoke because I don't want you to tell me that I shouldn't smoke. So, we are friends. That's how we determine that we are friends, because we don't challenge each other, right? It becomes like the comfort zone.
Yeah.
And yet, if we want to thrive and we want to figure out what is our true essence, then we need to get out of our comfort zone. And that is uneasy. So how incredible that the word unease, very connected to this is, and maybe that's why through trauma we can learn a lot. We can figure out parts of ourselves that are hidden. I
Mm.
spoke a lot. I don't know. Maybe ideas are coming to you. What's your idea from the psychology to everything I said?
So, 2 points that really stood out. One is I'm going to read a quote by Carl Jung because that really, really resonated with me. Is there's no coming to consciousness without pain. And people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their soul.
Wow. Wait. That's the second one.
Yeah, it's part of the same quote.
Oh, hold on. Let's stay with the first one. Say it again.
There is no coming to consciousness without pain.
That's incredible. I can totally recognize, when you suffer pain, you are conscious. You can try to be distracted with something else. You can, sit on the sofa and watch TV. But if you're experiencing pain just from laying down on the sofa, you're going to be conscious. You cannot distract yourself from something else. So pain is consciousness. I
Yeah.
remember I remember this very line in a course I was doing on a meditation course many years ago. That was like 20 years ago, maybe, or 17 or something. And then we were talking about consciousness, and one of the students said, "Oh, I see. So pain is consciousness." And everybody, no, 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 it cannot be, because consciousness we think is something nice. But then immediately it became evident that it is. Pain is connected to consciousness. So
And
say the line again, please. It's great.
there is no coming to consciousness without pain.
I'm gonna write it down.
I'm gonna, okay, hold on then for a moment to let you write that down.
Uh-huh. I got it.
Yeah. And that's really profound because there is a lot of pain in human life. And that if we begin to see it as consciousness to come home and closer to the soul, because bringing our awareness, because that's what consciousness is, awareness to something within us that needs to be addressed, then that's such a radical way of looking at the pain that we are with. And most of us, and the coming back to where we started, is we're living in a world where pain avoidance is everything, and we'll go to
Correct.
any extent to avoid the pain that we are experiencing, whether it's emotional repression.
Right.
I know Alice Miller talks about depression as a repression of emotions, right? And emotional repression is such an uh, you know thriving sort of way of being today. While you're surviving, actually, you're doing anything to avoid the pain, whether it's addiction, whether it's using of, other forms of distractions, literally, to avoid and move away from the part of you that's calling you home, right? And then that's where Carl Jung's other thing says it's a privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Where wisdom reigns, there is no conflict between thinking and feeling. And
Good. That's an alignment, eh?
yeah,
Inner internal alignment.
internal alignment, internal
Hmm.
coming home of essence, where your mind and in your feeling and you're coming into your authentic self, and there is an expression of your essence that begins to occur.
Hmm. Very nice.
And psychology talks about it in that way, and most of what we do is to help people bring their awareness back to what is the pain actually, and let's sit with it and what is that trying to tell us. And in understanding and unraveling that one layer of the onion, taking that peel, the more layers we undo, the closer we're coming to the bulb of the essence.
I am I want to share also a quote. This is from Guru Nanak, and in the Sri Guru Granth Sahib, he says, pleasure is the poison and pain is the remedy.
Mm.
This is so close, huh?
Yeah.
Pleasure is the poison and pain is the remedy.
Yeah.
And again, coming back and understanding the Buddhist teachings as well, is not about pain, it's about suffering, right? It's about letting go of the suffering and wisdom. You're bringing the topic of wisdom. Wisdom is letting go of the suffering, is letting go of the wisdom, is like bringing light to your darkness. The darkness is avidya, ignorance. So through wisdom, you can fill your inner darkness with light. And that's letting go of the suffering, not necessarily of the pain, but of the suffering. Because there's an inherent pain just from being alive, just from being human. There's already pain. You know?
Mm. But the suffering, if we could just spend a few moments, because um, there is a wisdom, like you said, in that, right? And the suffering is that the conflict that we feel internally between the ego and the soul essence, and
Yeah, good.
that I was reading this gentleman's work, Dr. Stone, who talks about how the essence of the ego is to conquer the subconscious and understand the unconscious, at the same time being subservient to the soul's, uh,
Say
you
it
know.
again. Say it again.
So the role of the ego is to make the subconscious conscious and the unconscious conscious, at the same time being being in service to the soul.
It's right. So that's putting the ego to your service, let's say.
Yes, and most of us think the ego is who we are, and that's where the conflict arises,
Right.
right? And the ego is the development, the personality, our beliefs, and all of those things, conscious and unconscious, that we talked about in our first
Yeah.
episode. How that is that conflict that we have with ego versus soul, that actually brings about that further disconnection and suffering. And then the ego sees us as separate, and therefore the suffering between two people that occurs. So I was just wondering how the yogic wisdom brings that together, because what we are trying to do in therapy today is to able to have someone notice, observe themselves from the space of the true self, to observe themselves from the essence, or the observer, the consciousness, and say, okay, what is this personality or these traits that I've developed, and how were they developed, and are they serving me today, and what belief is that driving. But how does yogic wisdom bring that together, and how does that support some of what, I mean, I think psychology is feeding off yogic wisdom and ancient wisdom. Having said that, Carl Jung spent a lot of time doing Kundalini yoga, by the way, and he's written
Mm.
a book on it as well.
Yes,
Uh,
he has. Yeah.
and the how does that align to bringing that alignment within the human being, where suffering need pain may exist, but suffering need not be there in that internal conflict of, do I listen to the mind or decide? And in layman's terms, I hear there's conflict, my mind says one thing but my heart says something else.
Right. So two things are coming to my mind. And one is an image. I'm having an image, seeing an image of a center of light.
Mm.
You know, the center of ourself is our soul. The soul is just shining. It's just a bright, like a light bulb, just shining. And then in these layers of onion, you know, the onion layers that are around me, there is a number of issues. We call it, you know, our dark zones or dark areas, right? Sometimes we talk about these things which are painful. They become like a shadow.
Shadow,
But
yeah.
more than become like a shadow, let's look at it like this. This is a point of light. This is the source of light. And if we have an obstacle in our psyche, in our personality, that's going to produce a shadow on the other side, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is, we get focused looking at the shadow, and we don't understand the gift that this is giving us, which is, look, if you look at the shadow, just look back and you'll see the light, right? So when we are seeing the shadow in front, we can get focused on the shadow. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. At least we are saying, oh my God,
Mm.
and not another word. But, you are looking at the shadow and then you are suffering, or you can perceive, look, this shadow is coming from something, some obstacle, and that's also giving you a clue of the light source that is originating from this light source. And
Yeah.
not only that, by seeing how big the shadow is, then we can see also how close we are to the source.
Mm.
I'm just now going into a philosophical imagination, yeah?
I
But
have it because this was what really helped me, because I was so focused on looking at at the shadow that I forgot that the source of a shadow is always the light,
correct,
right? And so where is the light within?
yes,
Right? And when you notice that light, then you're like, aha, I'm both shadow and light.
that's right. Well, I am in the essence, I'm light,
Yeah. In
but
essence, I'm light.
in my totality, there is shadow as well. There's both. Yeah, there's yin and yang. Yeah.
Yes.
So and if the obstacle is very very close to the source, the bigger the shadow is going to produce.
Mm.
Right? You take a point of light and you get very very close, you're going to make a big big shadow. So sometimes the biggest shadows are actually the ones that are giving us the clue how close we are to the source.
Mm.
Something that looks unsurmountable, something so huge that is clouding my whole perspective of life. Like life has no meaning if this is the case. Well, then if it's so radical, maybe there's something about this that you have to learn, and that will be the meaning of your life. Right? See, if you find life has no meaning because this happened, pay close attention because there is something there that can give your life meaning because you are so close to the source as well.
Can you explain that? Because I think that's really beautiful and profound and really important.
It's
Uh,
just a metaphor, right? And I'm just doing a visualization, an image. If
yeah.
you have a point of light, the closer that you get, the bigger the shadow is going to be. And sometimes the shadow is so large that it seems to darken the whole life experience. And then we are looking towards the shadow. We are not looking back. We are looking towards the shadow, and we experience is such a dark moment of my life. Everything is meaningless. Everything is dark. It's like I see no up, no out. I see no way out. Life has no meaning. Well, if this shadow is so huge, this is giving you a clue that you are close to something very relevant to your life
Mm.
because the obstacle is very close to the light. So whatever you can learn from that experience, because there's always something we can learn. No matter what happened, there's always something we can learn. Whatever you can learn from that experience, because that's another thing. People are just junkies of experience. They just want experiences for experience sake, like bungee jumping, just for the sake of bungee jumping or whatever. Well, life throws us a lot of experiences. It's not about having an experience. It's about what do you learn from that.
Mm.
Even spiritual experiences, some people go to a yoga retreat and they have a nice meditation experience. Maybe they see bright colors, or suddenly they can see auras, or they can have a little glimpse into their future, or something that is not rational. And then they get so fascinated, they spend the next 20 years trying to replicate that experience, going back to meditation, hoping for those lights to appear, hoping to see again the auras, or hoping to see a vision of the future. That was just an experience from before, but we get very attached to it. So any
Mm.
experience, no matter how beautiful it is or how dark it is, there's something we can learn in it. It's not just about the experience itself. So if we are having an experience and it's so dark and it encompasses everything, you don't see beyond the horizon, whatever you can learn from that, and there's always something we can learn, that lesson, because it's so big, it can be the closest you can get to your light source, to the essence of yourself. I think it makes sense.
Yeah. Which brings me back to how would you define, or how does one, from the yogic uh, standpoint, strengthen that connection to soul and essence? Because if you're living from there so much more, we're living more consciously, more aware, more in control and mastery of of our responses, which is honestly all that we have really control over. We may want to control everything because it's come from a space of fear, or fear of the unknown, or loss of control, or needing to know. And yet when I'm standing in my essence, I need to, and living from that space, I don't really have that need anymore, because soul has no need. It's the ego that has these needs.
Correct. That's right. Yeah.
And so when I'm living from that, then I'm content, I'm whole, I'm complete, I already am.
Correct.
Right. And that is essentially what then the whole chasing an experience, or trying to feel that again, or trying to prove something, or be good enough, or be, then you're radically different. You're going from doing to being, as we started off with.
Yeah, but hold on one second, because there's also many people who will hear those words and they will malinterpret them. And then they will start to go and say, well, if I am in my soul, I have no needs. So
Mm.
I'm going to have no needs. I pretend I don't have any needs. And well, okay, yes, you're a soul, but that you also have a body. You also have emotions. You also have a mind, and body, emotions, mind, energy, all these things have needs, and they need to be met as well. So you can pretend that you are soul, just soul, and then I don't need to eat. Well, okay, good luck with that, right? I mean, there is also some needs that need to be taken care of, but yes, the soul itself doesn't have needs.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up and saying that so articulately and pointing that out.
It's not so unusual. I see people like this in the yogic path. They come into our yoga classes and they have these fantasies of what they can be, like saintly images, and they don't need anything, and they live like that. Well, their life becomes a big mess. Very often they have money problems, home problems, relationship problems, but and they it's fine, it's okay, I'm not attached to anything. Actually, they are very detached from everything, and they have created a fantasy in their mind that they are enlightened. But
Mm.
actually, the mind is so powerful, it can even make you believe that you are enlightened. That's how incredible it can be. So this concept of the needs, that's very relevant to be, okay, yes, I'm in tune with my soul and my soul has no needs. And I notice the needs of my body and I cover them and I don't get attached to that as well. So being able to live both sides, no?
Yes, and thank you again for saying that and articulating that, because that is also a trauma response, to not then address your needs or articulate your needs, because asking for needs were unmet before, and they were too painful. And so
Yeah.
then just bypass them and say, I have no needs, and that becomes a survival and coping mechanism. So
Yeah,
thank you.
bypassing that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But my to then just take it back to say that the soul can observe my needs, and then recognize that I have those needs, and be neutral about, and not judging myself for having those needs, and allowing
Correct.
myself to meet them in a way that is healthy and compassionate, right? And honoring the human experience while the soul is still. And I think that would that be right to say, therefore, that that is the essence of yoga, that it is the union of the physical with the soul, and coming back home to that. And how does one then use that as a way to live from that space of being an observer that may be neutral, um, whilst having a full experience of the self and others in that union? Or is that too
Right.
difficult a question? Can I
Yes, yes. I think it
answer
makes sense.
it?
I mean, the way I understand what you are saying is the essence of soul is consciousness.
Yeah.
And the more we are advancing in our yogic path is about developing our consciousness and staying more conscious in life. And that includes being also conscious of the needs that we have and being able to satisfy them without being attached to them. And this objective you were asking of yoga, it would be one of them would be, so to be one, yoga means union, so to be one in my body, emotions, mind, and spirit, so that they are all aligned, and then I can consciously experience all that alignment. I think that would be like the first bridge of my separation from the soul. The second one, and most important, that would be, most important, the two of them are important, but the second one would be this separation from the universe and from God. That would be the second level. So the first level is the separation from myself, my essence, to bridge that separation, bridge the gap, apparent separation, apparent distance, apparent disconnection, which is not true, but that's how we feel it. And second one, again, to bridge the second gap, that we are connected to everything. So let me ask you something, because you worked a lot in therapy and you've had lots of clients who've gone through deeply traumatic experiences and they've suffered a lot and they've gone through pain. And I'm sure you have plenty of these cases where they have been in the darkest point of their lives and they were able to turn around and see some lessons. So this example that we were giving about the point of light and the obstacle and the darkness, can you say something about some case that you will remember without specifics, but what that person had to do to go through all that darkness and learn, and the impact that that learning later had on what they gave meaning in their life?
Yeah, so I think what really is the understanding that I am not the pain and I am not just this experience and these beliefs that I have made about myself, which is causing me the suffering or the events. There's something more to me than that. And that in connection with that true self and the soul and the understanding that, oh, I am also this true self and this soul. And if I can connect with that, which takes a long time because you have to first get into the body as well to able to connect to aspects of yourself that feel safe to be viewed in that way, because I'm so used to seeing myself in a certain way. Like I said, the closer you are to it, the bigger it is and more unsurmountable it is with in some cases, and the pain is then deeper because it may seem like there's no way out, or this is how I have to live with this pain. And in this particular case, it was connecting back to, oh, there is another part of me that I don't even know exists. And when I'm able to sit with that and observe it, suddenly something shifts. Suddenly that part that was disconnected, I begin to say, oh, that feels so much more like me. There's an aliveness to it almost. So that feeling that felt like the only way to deal with the pain was to numb, for example, or distract. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm able to sit with this pain and realize that I'm not just only this pain. There's something more to me than that.
Mm-hmm.
And that over time, that fear of the pain also reduces, or the fear of what I may see or may find out reduces. The fear of the unknown, that I'm carrying something that is so terrible in me that cannot be acceptable or loved or worthy or deserving, begins to lose its fold in in that person's life. And there is a sense of, oh, then let me look at what else life has to offer. So while this is still happening, the pain and the grappling and sitting with it and understanding that there is there, and oh, I made this mean this about me, and that may not always have been the case. Now there's almost space in the body to create new beliefs in new ways. So then that what which was stuck in this person meant that he could go out and actually experience life in a different way. And the interaction with life changed, the interaction with people changed. It wasn't all fear and all pain and therefore shutting down and isolating. And in that experience, there was more gifts that were showing up in, oh, I didn't realize that I'm a good listener also, or or that, oh, suddenly I realized that I'm really good at writing and I can write this experience of my pain that people are connecting to.
That could be
And
very
suddenly
healing.
my
Yeah.
life has more meaning in just feeling, but no, now I'm more empathetic. I can understand people and I
Mm.
see where they are coming from. But now I'm not just saying, yes, I'm beginning to say, hey, when I had this experience, this is what I was able to see and do, and maybe you can too. And that's where we're at, in different stories. But this particular individual who is now wondering, oh, is this even the space that I want to be at, and we're going to want to go deeper into my experience of what gifts I have that I'm beginning to recognize, and what can I do with this writing that I've uncovered, that is reaching out to people and people are connecting with.
Mm.
And suddenly the pain or the experience, like you said, gives in itself a meaning.
Yes, and also reaching out to people, they can notice that everybody suffers, everybody is in pain.
Yeah,
So it becomes less personal as well, no?
absolutely. And I mean, if I look at my support group, and as more people are coming in with loss and bereavement, there is an understanding of I am not alone,
Mm.
and we have a shared experience, and that we are talking about that, and in that understanding there is also this deep quest for truth, and understanding, okay, if my soul, so we start, if then it takes you on to this path of questioning and inquiry, right? Not necessarily why, but where does the soul go, what happens to the soul, and suddenly inadvertently it brings you up to this question of soul, which maybe I wasn't thinking about before this event occurred. And then I'm beginning to explore the soul, and where is my
Right.
soul then, right? And it brings you on to, it has brought a lot of people, whether they were in the support group or whether they come in with to say, okay, how can I then therefore give this message out to other people that there is healing, there's hope, there is a soul, there is all of these. Suddenly the messaging changes for that person, and there is a new meaning to life, because all of us are looking for meaning and purpose.
I really like this. Let me just highlight something that you just mentioned, because there's been a whole path to that person's journey,
Yeah.
but it's always a very good sign when at the end of the path they are sharing what they learned. It's not just that they learn something and they are applying it, but also they are sharing it, being it teaching or writing, and then distributing that in some way. But that's the sign that you have completed the journey of the lesson. The lesson has to, you have to receive the lesson, and then you are the student. But the moment that you are teaching it, or showing it or sharing it, then you are the master, no? And you become a master of your own experience. So whatever has happened is being transformative, and I changed it, and now I can give something back out of that. That's always a very, very good sign that they reached a great conclusion to that experience.
Yeah, and that
Awesome.
we share it. And does that, and I think that would take us to some of our future conversations around destiny and dharma, and all of those sort of things that people begin to start questioning really at that point of time, whether it's karma or dharma, and we will come to that in just a bit. But in the future conversations that we have. But coming back, I think the conversation around how we come back to soul and essence, and what can we do to connect more to that. If there are anything that you may share with us, because what we do is one aspect of psychology, and I know we bring in mindfulness and meditation, but just from ancient wisdom, yogic wisdom, what can an individual do to connect more to that essence and the truth of who they are and their true self, to give a to live more from that conscious state?
A friend of mine would say there's three things: meditation, meditation, and meditation. It's like, but jokes aside, uh, if the essence of the soul is consciousness, that anything that can bring you consciousness is going to bring you closer to the soul. So, and consciousness is not the same as the mind, and it's not the same as reflecting or even analyzing, especially it's not the same as analyzing intellectually. So I'm not talking about thinking about your life, about thinking about what you did or what happened. That's intellectual reasoning, or um, psychoanalyzing yourself. That's not necessarily healthy. That you can go into a very, a constant loop on that. So I'm talking about consciousness. So anything that can bring you consciousness is going to help. And everybody will have their own expression of that. And yoga has some general tools that are useful. And there's some a number of meditations that are standard and anybody can practice. But some people will find that they are most conscious when they are very early in the morning and go for a run, and they don't even wear headphones or anything. They're just running with the outside and with themselves, and that's a moment that they find extreme peace. Well, why are you so peaceful? Because it's the nature of the soul to be peaceful and joyful. That's something that is more about the nature of the, that's not something that needs to express itself, but is in the essence. There is a peace and a joy in contacting with the soul. So just, early morning, get out, go for a run in the darkness. The day has not, the sun hasn't come out. Everybody's asleep and you're alone in the road. That could be really, really bring you closer to yourself. Another person, that would be scary, right? But
Mm.
again, it doesn't necessarily mean don't do it, because fears are just fear of the unknown. We just talked about the unknown, and you talked about the process that person went through and how they were afraid of the unknown. And God is the greatest unknown. So you want to be contact with God, you are going to have to face the unknown sooner or later. So why not sooner, right? This
Yeah.
could be the philosophy. But anybody can find their own expression of that. Another person will be tending the garden and just, looking at the flowers and just taking care of the flowers in their own garden. That could be a great way to connect to their soul. So anything that brings you consciousness, I think that's going to be a great way to connect to the soul in general. Then specifically, every person is different. In universally, yoga has plenty of tools for doing that, like for example meditation.
And I have just one question before I think we're coming to sort of a close is how do I know I've connected with my soul? You said it has a sense of peace and joy. Um,
Yes, yes, I think so. And you see, if you ask that question that the mind is wanting to doubt, you see, when
mm,
you ask that question, that's the mind, and the mind always is always ready to doubt, and we have to be able to surrender that doubt at some point,
mm,
and let it go. Because if we keep doubting, it's just gonna sabotage whatever experience is meant to come. So we can be, meditating, and suddenly you feel the energy coming up through your nadis, your energy channels, and your chakras are opening, and you're like, whoa, 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 what is this? And you have an incredible experience. 10 minutes later, 1 hour later, or next day, you're gonna think, did I just imagine all that? And then you doubt it. And when you were in the experience, you knew. But
mm,
then when you are not in the experience, are you going to doubt it and then sabotage whatever you got out of that? Or are you just going to trust and let go of the doubt of the experience? And I
mm,
think that's something we need to choose to do. That's something that we need to consciously choose to do, to say, I'm not going to doubt whatever I got when I was in the light.
mm,
Now I'm in the darkness. I'm seeing all this shadow in front of me. But my life has not always been like this. And there's been moments of light. And I got something out of those moments. And maybe it was one of these conclusions, like your client, like figuring out, you know what, I'm not just this. I have other qualities. So there's other virtues in you and other qualities. When you are in the darkness, just don't allow the doubt to come in, because when the doubt enters the mind field, it's like the little worm in a barrel of apples.
yeah.
A little worm, it will eat all of them. So you cannot allow the doubt to go like this. But I'm not saying blind faith. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you've had a glimpse, and you were in the lamp, in the light, and for a moment you felt that you exist. And
Mm,
that's an experience of peace and joy, and just awareness and see clearly, right?
yes.
Okay, wonderful. When you are there, the point is not when you are there. The point is when you are not there. When you are not there, you just have to surrender any doubt and decide, I am not going to question that experience.
Mm,
What I'm going to do is, next time I am in that experience, I'm going to question, where am I? What am I? Who am I?
mm,
That you can do. But I'm not going to question it when I'm in the dark. So
mm.
don't question the day or the light in the darkness, let's say.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that, Ardaas ji. I think one of the things we haven't really talked about in when we were planning is trust, because I think that's such a big part of this whole experience and conversation. Maybe we need to go back and look at that a little bit as well. But thank you so much for
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's great talking to you. I'm having fun.
same here. I'm just having so much of joy and so much of
Yeah,
fun.
I'm enjoying. Yeah, it's an enjoyment to talk about these things with you. What is the topic for next week?
For next week, it's emotions, a really big
That's
one.
right.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
it is.
So don't miss it out. If anyone who is listening, don't miss it next week.
And, and join
Emotions.
us with your questions and inquiries. We're interactive. We're live on
Yes.
YouTube at 5:30 p.m. India time and 1 p.m. Portugal time every Friday. So come in with your questions. We really love to hear from you. Thank you for joining us today. Um, thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Nyana.
Thank you, Ardaas.
So,